En Lingua podcast live from Dessau is broadcast from Mitteldeutschland and features all things languages. The show is hosted by our teachers, presenting students and guests from all walks of language learning experiences. Hi, Alex, and welcome to En Lingua podcast live from Dessau.
Hello, nice to be here. On the other side of the world, albeit.
Alex, we met in Dessau as colleagues at En Lingua. Did you speak German before you arrived in Germany?
I had some basic knowledge of German. I studied for a couple of years in school. I took German at GCSE level and probably left school able to order myself food in a restaurant. I then met my ex-girlfriend who was German at university, and for the 2 years before I moved to Germany, because of being motivated by her, I started self-studying. So I never had any lessons, but I think when I arrived in Germany, I was probably a low B1 already.
Okay. Yeah, why did you come to Germany?
So I was always really interested in moving abroad, and especially when I had finished my studies. I graduated with an English and linguistics degree, and teaching just seemed like a really sensible and beneficial way to kind of make that dream a reality. I originally wanted to come to Southeast Asia. It was kind of always my goal. And in many ways, Germany was a bit of a kind of side quest, and it's like a distraction that lasted like 3 years. But yeah, it was a wonderful decision, and I feel good having made that smaller step before I made the larger step to come to the other side of the world.
Okay. So what kind of advantages did that small step give you?
I think, moving to a new country is a very daunting experience. You know, especially in my case, when I came to Vietnam, I knew literally 0 people.
Okay.
And it was, I think moving to Dessau was obviously a little easier because I had a couple of contacts in the country at least. But the main thing I learned was just to try and like expand that social circle and start doing the things that you're interested in doing as soon as you can, as soon as you arrive.
Okay.
I think my first year in Dessau, I was maybe a little bit lazy. I refrained from sort of pursuing my passions in favor of maybe just relaxing a bit too much. But then once I started engaging in sports and trying to play music with people, then it really opened up the experience and made it a lot more enjoyable. So I think when I arrived in Vietnam, I was able to do that much quicker. And as a consequence, 2 years later, I feel I'm in a much kind of stronger sort of social and also mental position than I was after 2 years in Dessau.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as I recall, you have a Celta certification, right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
So having a Celta certification and sort of learning these types of new methodologies and teaching practices that you can incorporate into your classroom teaching, like, did you also use similar methods in teaching yourself German? Because you never had a German course, right?
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting interesting point. I think my philosophy on language learning is all about motivation.
Okay.
I know people who really have a very loose grasp of how language works, but if they've immersed themselves in a culture that they're interested in for long enough, they can achieve a level of proficiency that is perfectly fine for their environment and for their life. I think the Celta in itself is a lot about planning and classroom management, more so than actual language learning methodology.
Okay.
And when it comes down to actually learning new bits of vocabulary, I think with any language, it's just cramming. It's just memory and recall and reminding yourself of a new word as soon as you learn it, and 5 minutes after you learn it, and 10 minutes after you learn it. And that's your ability to do that stems from your motivation to interact with people from that culture and from that language. So
how important was it for you to be in Germany to practice the language, to increase your proficiency?
Oh, essential. I mean, I used to, I lived in a, what do they call them? You probably know the German word even. Oh my God.
You lived in a shared flat, right? I remember your apartment.
Yeah, what do they call them? A Wohnung, a WG, a WG.
A WG, that's right.
A little WG, yeah, I haven't said that word in a long time. And yeah, so I was able to invite everyone in the WG around for dinner, and I would have a little notepad all the time, and any words I didn't recognize, I would jot down. But yeah, it was certainly an advantage, especially living in the east of Germany, where and in a town like Dessau, when you consider that maybe English proficiency isn't quite as good in the east as in the west.
Right.
And also that it's not as good amongst the older generation. And as we both know, Dessau is weighted towards elderly people.
I think it's the oldest population I think in Dessau, in Germany, right? The oldest.
I remember, I thought I read in Europe at one point, but maybe that's not true anymore. I'm not sure. And then that's it. I didn't have much contact with people, my own age in their mid-20s or so. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those people who would speak English would move away to Berlin or Leipzig or other cities in Germany.
Right.
So, I made great friends with their parents, essentially, and cooked them all dinner. And that was how I learned German, yeah.
So what did you find particularly challenging about learning German?
You know what? After 2 years of learning Vietnamese, nothing. I wish I could learn German again.
Have you lost some proficiency skills, or?
I would say so, because I'm not using it anywhere near as regularly. But I think a few days in Germany it would come back. It would come back pretty well. I still have a few German friends here, and I've been trying to watch a few German series on.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely have a very analytical sort of understanding of language learning, but that comes definitely more from my degree than the Celta.
Okay.
The Celta helped, but studying linguistics, you spend 2 years learning what is syntax, what is morphology, what is semantics, how do these interact, and it just makes it so much easier when you come into a language like Vietnamese. It's a tonal language. They have 5 tones here, depending on the region of Vietnam that you're in. And when you come in with that understanding that, okay, ma is a different word from ma, okay, and you can actually understand that and consider that when you're listening to someone speak, it makes it a lot easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we get into Vietnamese, one last question about learning German.
Bitte.
What tips would you give someone starting out in learning German or any other language for that matter? Like what tips could you give them?
My main tip goes back to what I said before. For me, it's about motivation and memory.
Mhm.
That's all it is. You can motivate yourself by trying to interact with that language as much as possible. Of course, everyone knows watching films, reading books, all of those things are incredibly helpful, not only for learning new words, but also for motivating yourself to learn the language and giving. I remember when I was learning German, I would so often like visualize myself having a conversation that was at the time beyond me, beyond my language proficiency.
Okay.
You're always like, oh, imagine if I could talk about this and I could talk about this. And then it just comes to creating the space where you can interact with that language or interact with those people. Like I was saying about inviting people over for dinner, it was really just a ruse.
Mhm.
And then it's all about memory. I learn a new word, I remind myself 5 seconds later, I remind myself a minute later, 2 minutes later. By the end of the day, I've done that a few more times and it's in, and it won't.
Okay.
Unless I move to another country for 2 years and forget the
Okay.
word for VP.
So motivation is important in learning a foreign language, right? You are now living in Vietnam. What is motivating you to learn Vietnamese?
Yes, so that is definitely the main difference between my Vietnamese and my German.
Was Germany, was it always going to be a transient country to you, do you think?
No,
Okay.
no, and I could certainly see myself moving back there in the future.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
So back to Vietnamese, like what's the main motivating factor? Are you planning? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think my Vietnamese is now at a point where I can very comfortably deal with my environment.
Okay.
So I can happily tell someone how to navigate to my house, or I can order food. I can go to the supermarket. I can ask where something is. Like I said, I'm around that sort of A2 B1
Mm-hmm.
low A2 level, solid A2 level. I actually had a bit of a tangent. I had a very motivating chat. I was speaking to a friend of mine who was still in Dessau last year,
Mm-hmm.
and she went to visit the Imbiss, the Vietnamese Imbiss.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
And I had like a little chat to the guy behind the counter in Vietnamese. And then we get to the point where my Vietnamese runs out, and then he switches to German, and then we talk in German for a bit. And he's like, "Oh, so you're German?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm English." And like, oh, I feel so praised.
Did you order something for her, your friend?
I think she ordered first, and then just gave her phone to the guy behind the counter. Yeah.
That's long.
Going back to my motivation for learning Vietnamese, I'm at a point now where I'm comfortable with my environment, and learning beyond this point is more about creating those social relationships.
Okay.
So I can think of a couple of people, for example, my girlfriend's mom, who doesn't speak any English, and I would love to be able to communicate with her better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big motivating factor. And also, I guess there's a sort of professional drive there as well, especially with it being so rare that foreigners can speak Vietnamese here.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a real advantage. It's kind of the key to a management position here.
Okay.
You wouldn't have a head of English who can only speak English in Vietnam. And those foreigners that come here, or those native English speakers that also have a proficiency in Vietnamese, are very, very sought after.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the main difference. My drive for learning Vietnamese is a little bit more external, as in it's based on it's based more on my work, as opposed to German. I didn't need German to work. But
Okay.
I just really enjoyed speaking it for the social side of things. That was much more internal motivation.
Okay, so that you talk about work, like what exactly are you doing there?
So at the moment, I'm working for a small Ielts center. But mostly adults, some teenagers. More often than not, they're working towards university entrance exams, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I've been there now for just under a year, mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about going back to teaching children. Okay. When I first arrived here, I had a really nice time. I taught a variety of classes. I wanted to try different age groups and different levels. So I taught like a kindergarten class. I taught like some kind of young adults. And I think I'm at a point now where I want to work towards like an international school or a bilingual school, sort of that slightly higher level. Okay. And probably, I think my preferred age group would be around primary, so around like 7 to 9 years old. Okay. I think is where the sort of the age I had the best rapport with, I think.
Okay. And can you tell our listeners what exactly is the Ielts test? Like, what is that?
The Ielts test is a internationally recognized English test that tests all 4 of your skills. Mm-hmm. And it's commonly used for university entrance exams or for, in some cases, even immigration tests and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of people just do an IELTS test so that they can say, oh, I have an IELTS 7.5 or whatever. It looks great on a CV. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, it's actually a very useful certificate to have.
So are you now teaching mostly like teenagers that are looking to go to university abroad?
Yeah, that's a pretty high proportion of the students. Yeah, I'd say about half of them are teenagers. The company also runs. We have some contracts with larger companies, more similar to what I did in Dessau, to what you mm-hmm. do at Englishman. Right. So recently last summer, I did a course with the Institute of Financial Training here. Okay. So essentially I was there about 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, teaching civil servants. Okay. So usually those people would travel to other countries, so the government would pay for them to go and study abroad. But obviously with COVID travel restrictions this year, they decided to just hold it in Hanoi.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the language landscape in Vietnam. How many languages are spoken there?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So unlike a lot of other Southeast Asian countries, Vietnam is not that homogenous. There are a lot of ethnic minorities here. I think the official count is 27. And those people, although they generally have proficiency in Vietnamese, they often have their own regional dialects or even languages that are more closely related to the languages of Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. Okay. So often in these border towns, they speak a variety that's very, very different. I mean, the main thing you have to consider is that Vietnam it's a huge country. It's a country of 97 million people. Mm-hmm. I believe that the 14th largest in the world in terms of population. And geographically, it's very split. It's a very long country, a lot like Chile. And there are 2 mega cities. There's Hanoi up here in the north, mm-hmm. which has 10 million people or so. And there is Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City in the south. And they are separated by, I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but around 1,500 miles. And it's very thin in the middle. So there's a lot of difference between the dialects of Hanoi and Saigon. Okay. To the point where you even have a different number of tones. One of the tones that they use in Saigon is just not, you can't hear the difference in a Hanoi accent.
That's interesting. Can you give us another example of the tones? Like you said, ma and ma. Like, can you explain?
Yes.
Can you give us a different example of something that?
I mean, I have to say, I'm really no expert when it comes to Vietnamese tones. I still can't produce them perfectly. Sometimes, for example, a word like chung is with an uptone. We call it a sac. So that means that the vowel in the middle of the word, the tone goes up, as you say it. So chung would be the flat no tone, and then chun would be with the rising tone.
So they're spelled identically, right? But they have different symbols to indicate different intonations.
Exactly, yeah. So Vietnamese uses the Latin alphabet, but there's with diacritics. Yeah.
Okay. What is diacritics?
Like you said, little squiggles or signs of the letters. Yeah.
That's a linguistics word that I don't know. So, what does chung? What does it mean?
Chung is egg.
And what is chung?
Chung. I don't know, but I see it written everywhere.
Okay.
So I think it might. I'm going to take a stab. I'm going to guess that it means something like flavor.
Wait, say it again. What was it?
I think it might mean flavor. Or something
flavor.
Like that. I'm not 100% sure.
So chung, egg flavor. Yeah.
Yeah. Chung. Well, it's post adjectival. It's post adjectival. What do you call it? The adjective goes after the noun. So
the adjective goes after.
Chung. Yeah.
No, it's interesting, and I'm sure it's challenging. So, like, how are you learning Vietnamese? Okay, obviously your partner is Vietnamese. Are you reading books, grammar books? Are you watching like videos online? Are you watching television? Like, what other kind of methods are you using to improve your skills?
Whenever there's a Vietnamese TV show on, I'm watching it.
Okay.
I'm not watching it by choice, but if I go to someone's house and it's on, then I will sit there and listen and try and pick up what I can, and maybe even ask if they can put the subtitles on.
Okay.
So I can pick up a few words that way.
What is a typical like program that you would watch? Are we talking like a game show or a talk show or
drama? There are good dramas. There are so many very bad drama. You don't have to speak the language to know that the acting is bad. There's so many of those here, and there's when you go to most of the shops here, so they have like a hang tapwa is like I guess kind of what you would call like a Späti in Germany.
Okay.
So just like someone's shop where they'll sell cigarettes, alcohol, snacks, that sort of thing. And whenever you're in one of those, there'll be someone watching one of these dramas on a TV. Sometimes go in, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take this, I'll take this, and what are you watching there? Try and get an idea of the plot. Yeah, but mostly it's similar to Germany. I would say most of my Vietnamese studying is based around food.
Okay.
Based around the kitchen, or not so much the kitchen here. I eat out a lot more than I did in Germany, just because it's so cheap to do here, and there's so much great food everywhere, and it's a really great social event to go out for like a hot pot or a sort of big communal meal. That's where I learn a lot of my Vietnamese. Okay.
So you're mostly going out. So the cost of living or the quality of life, like how is your quality?
I mean, this was actually something I wanted to touch upon when we were going to talk about my hometown. I mean, the price that I pay for I would say I live in absolute luxury here in terms of the part of town that I live in, and the house that I have, and the space that I have is fantastic. And it's cheaper than a single bedroom, that I could afford.
So can I ask that question? Like how many Like how many square meters is your apartment and how much are you paying for rent?
Oh, um, okay. I don't know how many square meters my apartment is, but I did strike pretty lucky with my place. So I've lived in the same place for 2 years. The
Okay.
whole time I've lived in Hanoi. The house belongs to the ambassador to India. Interestingly, yeah, Vietnamese ambassador to India. So he lives in India. He built this house about 20 years ago, but he's been
Okay.
living in India for the past 10 years. And it's a shared house.
Hmm.
So we have 8 bedrooms here, but it's huge. It's a mansion. It has a big garden. It has a pool out front. Um, and my room is enormous. It's ridiculously enormous, and it has like a pyramid roof. So like it's like 5 meters up to the ceiling. And I pay. I mean, I pay with bills included. I pay around $350
Okay.
US dollars. Yeah.
So your Vietnamese VG is much better than your German VG.
My German VG was pretty good. To be honest, I think I probably paid a little bit less than that even in Dessau. It
Okay.
wasn't quite as high quality, but it was a very like charming, beautiful house that I lived in Dessau.
Yeah, I don't remember
But
you having a
when
swimming pool.
no, I didn't have a swimming pool, but when I compare both of them to the living conditions in the
Hmm.
UK and what a renter can afford in the UK, then both of them just blow it out the water. I remember paying £500, so around 600 US dollars
Okay.
at the time for a single room in a 5 bedroom house with 9 other people living there and rats running through the kitchen. Um, some parts of the UK are just crazy, and you get very little bang for your buck as a renter.
So what does a typical weekend look like for you after working all week? Like how do you normally relax on the weekends?
So I actually run a weekly music event here.
Okay.
Like I said, Hanoi, well, the whole of Vietnam hasn't really suffered from COVID. We haven't had the same restrictions that they've had in a lot of the rest of the world. So we've really luckily been able to do that since September. I think we started.
Hmm.
So that's every Friday night, and it's gaining quite a lot of traction. We're getting quite popular. We're filling the bar most weeks, so that's really good way to start the weekend. Saturday I always spend with my girlfriend. It's her only day off, so she runs a restaurant
Hmm.
from her home, sort of mostly takeout.
Okay.
But like with a small seating area, and Saturday is her day off, or the day where she gives the reins to her family and sort of
Okay.
lets them do all the work.
Is that how you met? You went in for a bite to eat?
No, we met in a bar actually.
Okay. What kind of music are you playing?
You know what? I have an answer for this on
Okay.
call because we've just like made trying to build our social media presence. We at our hardest we're punk, we're
Okay.
raw punk, and at our softest we're maybe folk or jazzy folk, I
Okay.
guess.
So you mentioned Corona.
Hmm.
Vietnam has been praised for its Corona action plan. Is there something in the culture that has enabled this?
Hmm.
Why have the numbers been so low?
I think it's a really interesting question as to whether culture has anything to do with it. Um, and I think the short answer I have to give is no.
Okay.
There's nothing that Vietnam did that another country in the world couldn't have done.
And
Um,
so what did they do? Yeah.
so for a bit of context, Vietnam was one of the worst hit countries by the SARS epidemic
Hmm.
about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And since then they put in a plan to deal with any future pandemics. So when it was first announced as an epidemic in Wuhan, Vietnam was actually the first country to stop international flights from Wuhan,
Okay.
and to test people for flu symptoms. This is before a reliable COVID test had been developed. So we were testing people for flu symptoms when they came into the airports. We were quarantining anybody that were suspected of having symptoms. We share a, I think, 800-mile border with China that was totally closed. The land border was totally closed.
Right.
And Vietnam's objective has always been to have 0 cases. So the preparing for COVID started here before COVID even got here.
Okay.
That's the key, and it's been contact tracing. It's been on the effort of the government to find every single person that they suspect might have the disease, and to sort of close every infection loop and find every person within those loops. The effort that they've put into to quarantine, to making sure that people are treated. Basically, any COVID treatment here is totally free.
Okay.
If you were to fly into the country right now, which you can do, you will be put into a 2-week quarantine in a hotel. You would be fed. You'd be looked after. You have to pay for it, but
Okay.
yeah.
So when is the last time you had to wear a mask? Mandatory.
So in the last year, we've had 3 outbreaks in Vietnam. One was around the start of the whole thing, so last February or March. And as soon as a case was identified in Hanoi, there was a citywide mask mandate was brought in. I will say that, and this does touch upon culture, Hanoi is a very polluted city.
Okay.
And for that reason, most people wear masks a lot of the time when they're outdoors anyway.
Okay, already. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't like you had people protesting saying they couldn't breathe, because we all know that you can breathe better with a mask on here.
So pre-COVID, were you wearing a mask when you walked? Do you walk to work, or are you biking? Like, how are you getting around?
I'm on a motorbike, and I'm usually wearing a mask. Yeah.
Okay.
On the roads, at least. Yeah. When you're driving, you want to be wearing one. Yeah.
Is it dangerous to ride a motorbike there for you, or no?
I certainly know people who've been involved in accidents. I've actually had a friend die already since coming here 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I know another guy who lost his leg. Yeah, it's definitely riding a motorbike here is pretty dangerous. One thing I will say is that I think it was last January 2020, they brought in a new law in Vietnam, revolutionary: don't drink drive. Honestly, I can't remember the statistic exactly, but it was something like 40% fewer road-related deaths in like the week after they brought in this new law. Where it was already a law, I think, but they gave the police breathalyzers and actually gave them the ability to enforce the law and give fines to people who didn't obey it.
Okay.
I do a lot of driving outside of the city. Like I said, the city's pretty polluted, and it's nice to be able to get out on a weekend. And you only have to drive maybe an hour or so. You can get to some nice lakes or some mountains. Okay. It's really not that far to go out into the country. And then the roads here are phenomenal. It's a very mountainous country. It's a very wet country. There's just the landscapes here are absolutely stunning. Rice paddies built into mountain sides, winding roads, and sunsets everywhere you go. It's really
fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. It really does. Could you give our listeners a couple of cultural tips who are planning to visit Vietnam in the future? Some do's and don'ts.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. So I thought about this question a little bit, and a lot of the do's and don'ts I can think of are based around superstition. Okay. The Vietnamese people are pretty superstitious, and a lot of those superstitions have to do with death. So, for example, it's a lot of people here are Buddhist, and a lot of people who maybe aren't even Buddhist still follow some Buddhist traditions. Okay. So one of those, for example, would be In most houses, in the highest point in the house, you'll have like a shrine.
Mm-hmm.
And once a month, based on the Chinese Vietnamese lunar calendar, you will make offerings to your deceased ancestors.
Okay.
And one of the things that you do is you burn incense sticks, and they sit upright. And this is why anything that sort of sits upright in this sort of configuration is considered a sign of death.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're eating rice and you put your chopsticks in the top of the rice, then that's a sign of death. That's a definite don't. You absolutely can't put your chopsticks on top of your rice. You have to put the chopsticks down by the side.
Okay.
And if you do that in a restaurant, the waiter or someone from another table will come over and take your chopsticks out.
Okay.
And put them on the table. They're very serious about that one. A lot of one really nice do that you can do here is when you pay someone for something, you always hand the money over with two hands.
Okay.
I think both of those things are actually universal across Asia, across Southeast Asia, and it's seen as a sign of respect. You're putting more effort into the handing over of the money.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll see if people have their hands full and they can't quite do it with two hands, they'll do it with one hand, and they'll touch a part of their hand to the arm that's giving the money.
Okay.
So that it's all sort of connected. It's not just, you would never just put the money down on a table. It's considered quite rude here.
Right.
Always look both ways when you cross the street. Traffic doesn't really move for ambulances here either. It's very strange. The road is a wild jungle. In terms of do's, talk about you can be expected with any Vietnamese person, whether you're speaking Vietnamese or English with them, that they will want to know your age, your relationship status, whether you have children. Those are the key factors. A big reason for that is that Vietnamese has like an honorific system sort of baked into its pronouns. So the Vietnamese word for you or for I is dependent on our relative ages and our gender and our positions.
Okay.
In the same way that I think it is in Japanese. It's
okay.
Similar. So I would you're a man who's more than 5 years older than me, so I would call you Ang.
Okay. And what would I call you?
You would call me M.
M?
M.
Okay.
Yeah. Perhaps if I was your teacher, you would call me Ko.
Ko.
Is like teacher. And some of my students decide to use that, and some of them will just use Ang or M, depending on our age difference. Okay. So you kind of need to know that basic bit of information. You need to know, right, are they male or female, and are they older or younger than me? And if so, how much older, how much younger, in order to just build a basic sentence.
Okay.
It's not like with German where you can just use the passive and avoid saying Sie.
Okay.
You can avoid saying du or sie. You can just use the passive. But in Vietnamese, you can't. You can't build a sentence without those pronouns. Okay. It's essentially impossible. And people care so much about children and relationships. I still don't really understand it, but I know that I'm 29 now, and to most Vietnamese people, that's pretty old to not be married and have 3 children. And I'm told that all the time.
Yeah. So your partner, you said her family is running the cafe, right? Or she and her family are working together in the cafe?
It's her family home, but it's her business, which she founded from the home. Okay. So they opened up their sort of own dining room and kitchen and turned it into a restaurant, and then they still have the floors above as their private home, but the bottom part is now a business when they're open. Okay. So that's very common to have here. And also it lends itself quite well. The structure of the houses lend themselves very well because they're very thin and very tall.
Mm-hmm.
So often people have this ground floor business, or they rent it out to another business, and people live in the flats above.
Is it like home cooked meals?
Yeah, she cooks sort of Vietnamese, Western fusion food.
Uh-huh.
What did I have from her yesterday? I had like a Korean barbecue chicken.
Okay.
I've had she does like a really nice coconut curry, beef stew.
Nice.
Yeah, homely meals. And the sort of gimmick of the restaurant is that it's called rainbow rice.
Okay.
So the rice is served in not 7 but 4 different colors. And one of them's black. I'm not sure if she understands what a rainbow is, but it's a good gimmick.
So it's 4 different colors of rice.
Yes.
Black. Brown.
The black one is the brown one. It's
Okay.
like I think it's brown rice with some sort of natural black coloring. There's black, blue, yellow. Unless it's in front of me, I can't remember.
Okay.
There's a fourth.
But Rainbow Rice Cafe sounds fantastic. Yeah, that sounds good.
It's really good. Yeah. She's a great chef, and she's actually hoping to do sort of the Celta of cooking this year. So she's doing an internationally recognized cooking course that potentially means she could live and work in another country in the future and find a job in a hotel restaurant or something like that.
Like, what does the future hold for Alex? It sounds like it sounds like you are very comfortable, and you've met someone there, and it's it sounds like you plan on staying for a while.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just bought a rabbit, and they live about 5 years. So I guess I'm stuck. Yeah, so for me, I think a 1 year plan that seems so soon. It seems really soon. 1 year. My 1 year goal, I would like to have my band performing more often and bigger shows.
Okay.
And in terms of my professional life, like I said, I'd like to be working in a bilingual or international school. And I think now I've been here a couple of years. I've taught at a lot of different places for a lot of different age groups, and I have a good idea now of the things that I enjoy and the things that I don't enjoy.
That, like the kindergarten or the little bit older age 7 to 9 is your favorite right now.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is. Like, do you know why that is?
I feel very I just feel very energized by them. Always, especially with kindergarten, even the naughtiest kindergarten class, like just like terrible behavior. Like I kind of buy into it, and my energy sort of flows with them. And it's about they're a lot easier to win over than like moody teenagers.
Are there any specific differences of teaching like English in Vietnam and teaching English in Germany?
Most English teaching here is geared towards children.
Okay.
Right? That's another big reason that I'm not working with. I mean, I do work with adults at the moment, but it's if I wanted to do that, then it's more going down the testing route.
Okay.
It's more about like the Ielts exam. I'm happy doing it now, but I wouldn't want to be like an Ielts examiner for the rest of my life. I find it quite. I don't find it very interesting to just teach like how to get a mark on this exam.
Right.
I want to like equip people with like tools for the future, motivate them to go out there and see the world. So that's why I enjoy teaching young adults, and I enjoy teaching children. I don't particularly enjoy teaching for tests. I guess that's the short answer there.
No, I can see that, but I think with your qualifications, linguistic background, I would assume, and I could be wrong, that getting a job at one of the international schools, you're a
Mhm.
you're a good candidate for that position.
Yeah, yeah.
Are those jobs, once people get them, they don't want to give them up?
Uh, there are those kind of jobs. So I have worked that kind of job. I did a sort of I guess like secondment, like a short period at in a secondary school.
Okay.
Um, but I'm a linguist, and I was teaching literature. I was reading Shakespeare, and that's not where my interests lie at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I like reading in my own time, um, but I'm not very interested in sort of teaching academia in
Okay.
that sense.
Okay.
I feel much more comfortable in an ESL role,
Okay.
and I also see the potential of moving up in that industry here.
Okay.
I don't feel like it's a limited industry that it is potentially in some other parts of the world.
I want to know, you've talked about your band a couple of times now, so I want to like ask a few questions about the music.
Mhm.
What's the name of your band?
So as I told you, we the house here is like a mansion, and two of my housemates are in the band, so we are
Okay.
the mansion family.
Ah. Wait, is that Mancurian? Wait, what? Say it again.
It's the mansion family.
Oh, so this has nothing to do with Manchester. Okay, the Mansion family.
Yeah,
Oh,
because we live in a mansion.
and it
Yeah,
sounds like yeah, it sounds like the Manson family. That's good, dude.
yeah, right.
So are the other members of the band, are they also expats?
Yes, we have one Australian and two other Brits in the band.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Dude, that's exciting. And
Yeah,
it looks like that's something that gives you really a lot of joy, like, in staying there.
it is. Yeah, I don't know if you remember in my closing days in Dessau, I got involved. Oh, big shout out to the homies and homies, if any of them are listening. Do you
Dude,
remember the homies and homies?
I remember, like, I think I saw you play once. I think right before you left.
Mm. So there was a project organized by my friend Samreen, who was studying at the Bauhaus University, and she basically grouped together some international musicians.
Mhm.
We had me as a British guy, we had an Iranian, a South Korean, a Pakistani, Indian, a couple of Nigerians.
Do you remember
And
the Nigerian's name?
there was Teo, Adeteo. He,
Okay.
he he performs as Too Tipsy.
That's right, to Tipsy. He was our
Yeah.
first. He's the first person we interviewed.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Oh,
you'll have
nice.
to
Well,
you'll have to check out his episode.
yeah, big shout out to Too Tipsy. I know he's like continued the project, so I'll explain a little bit for the listeners that Homies and Nomies started as um, a collaboration between the international musicians and members of a old person's residency home.
Right?
Most of them have Alzheimer's or other similar diseases, dementia,
Right.
and music was just a wonderful healing tool for them.
Okay.
And at the end of our of the project, we did a performance at the Bauhaus for the graduation ceremony for the university. And that for me was a real like, oh, I really need to play more music, and wherever I go next, I need to start doing music immediately.
Hence the Mansion family.
Hence the Mansion family. Yeah, yeah. It's taken a couple of years to get here. I've definitely become like a better musician since being here. I spent a long time living here, going to a lot of gigs, meeting people who are much, much better musicians than me, and being like, oh God, it's going to take me forever to get there.
So how is the Vietnamese like punk genre? Is it happening at the moment? Like, you have a fan base?
It's still pretty small. So far we've just been performing every Friday night at a bar. We started off as the house band,
Okay.
and now it's moving a little bit beyond that, and we're starting to look at again like small local festival gigs, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Dude, you have to send us a file so we can put it to the podcast, man. Seriously.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I've talked about it enough now. I have to.
So let's do the last question, dude. The John question. I hope John is still listening out there somewhere. His name is still there. Is there a special name they call you because you're from Manchester? Is there something like that's unique about the people that come from Manchester?
Would you like to do a mini quiz, a mini quiz tangent?
Is it going to make me look like an idiot?
No. I'm going to give you the nickname for someone from a specific UK city. You tell me which UK city you think it is.
Oh, this is going to be horrible.
Like
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Geordie.
No idea.
John?
Wait, what was
back
that?
In. Geordie. John's back in. Geordie.
Geordie, you are from, I have no idea.
Bromwich.
You're going to make I'm going to look like an idiot. I know I'm going to look like an idiot. All right, give me an easy one. Give me an easy one.
There are no Ouija.
Yeah, like you should say like southerner. I'd say like from the south, northerner from the north. Like
Newcastle.
Okay, Newcastle. Oh, Newcastle. See, John knows this stuff.
So Newcastle is Geordie. That was the last one.
Newcastle is Geordie. Okay, that makes sense.
Ouija comes from Glaswegian.
Okay.
So Glasgow. Scouser?
Scouser. I have a feeling these are like football fanatics, and they fight.
The clue.
Scouser.
Liverpool.
Yes.
Liverpool. No idea. I know that Morrissey is from Manchester, man, and that's the most important thing I need to know.
2 points for John.
Yeah. So someone from Manchester is called a Mancunian.
Okay, pronounce that slower for our listeners.
Mancunian.
Mancunian.
Yes.
Like a mannequin.
You could say that.
Okay, and explain why is that?
Why are we Mancunians?
Yeah, why are you Mancunians? Who do you not like? Everybody?
No, I guess there's a rivalry with the Scousers with Liverpool.
Okay.
But, ultimately, we're both part of the northwest of England, and our cultural heritages are closely tied to one another. And it's London that we all hate.
An idiom a day keeps the doctor away. Let's talk idioms. Alex, today we'd like to extend an invitation to you for you to participate in our idiom section of our podcast episode.
Yes, please. I'm excited. I'm ready.
Do you have time to participate?
Yes.
Excellent.
Just a quick hello from me, Alex. How are you? It's John.
Hello, John. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
John is joining us. That's our idiom master.
Good evening from Vietnam.
So, Alex, what's your idiom? Have you got one for us, or
An English idiom?
Yes.
My English idiom is even a broken clock is correct twice a day.
Oh, very nice.
You know what?
Would you like me to elaborate?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that before. Like, how do you use that? In what context?
It means that even if someone is potentially foolish or stupid or makes terrible decisions, that every once in a while they'll make a good one.
Okay, so they're right 2 times a day.
Yeah.
So every once in a while they could say something that's not so stupid or ridiculous.
Yeah.
So when would be an appropriate time to use this? Can you give us an example?
I can give you an example associated with my house.
Okay.
And chickens. So I have a housemate, is actually my German housemate here. It's called Max. And a few months ago, he decided it was a great idea to buy chickens and keep them in our garden. And so far, it's been an unmitigated disaster.
Is that for goon?
It's ga with a down tone.
Okay,
ga.
okay.
I think it's a down tone.
That's eggs, John, in Vietnamese.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see. Oh, chung is egg.
That's right. Chung. Is it?
Yeah.
Did he buy the chickens for chung?
That was the plan.
Okay.
But so far, it's not been going very well. 3 of the 4 chickens have died.
Uh-oh.
And Max suggested the other day that maybe they have died because their chicken house is inadequately covered and doesn't protect them against the weather. And me wanting to make out like Max is a bit of an idiot and says and does a lot of stupid things, I could respond to that by saying, well, even a broken clock is right twice a day.
So Max acknowledging that he had a bad idea was him actually being right.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah,
that was his moment. That was his moment of not being silly.
I would say more. It's that he has a lot of suggestions for how to make the chicken house work, and usually they're terrible. But this one, actually protect the chickens against the weather, was a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, from one chicken owner to another, we also have chickens. I mean, in Germany, we have to insulate them quite well, and we have to protect them from foxes at night. So are there animals you've got to protect them from?
We have some cats walking around the garden sometimes. We have, in theory, there are snakes around here, although I don't know if any of them are big enough in the city to attack or maim a chicken. But it does get quite cold in the winter.
Okay.
So I've actually got an example for even a broken clock. What was the second part? Even a broken clock
Is right
twice a day.
Yeah.
is right twice a day. Yeah, I've got an example, between us and the office, Scott.
Okay.
Because you've had lots of interesting ideas in the past, which I thought weren't all that great. But when you came up with the idea of the podcast, I thought that's actually a good idea, and I'll support that one. So in this case, I would say to you, Scott, even an old clock works right twice in a day. In this case, I think you've got the podcast idea right.
No, hopefully I'm right more than twice a day, but that's a good example, John. You're right.
Well, the twice a day is only sort of metaphoric. So I'd say perhaps the day could be a period of time, Scott. I mean, if you get something right every now and again.
2 times in the 4 years that I've been here. Yeah, that's good.
Good hit, right?
I'd say a couple more than twice, but.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's actually that's a really nice way to end it. Yeah, Alex, that's a fantastic idiom, and I didn't know about that idiom, so I think I will look for ways to teach that to the students and to use it myself.
Yeah, I've never used it myself either, but yeah, I might put it into practice. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, that was very nice.
4, 5, 4. Hanoi.
Verdade.